His name is Malachi and he is my son. Well, it's been a roller coaster ride from when Kai started to have seizures, because we didn't know what was wrong with him, and we'd been in and out of specialists and medical facilities and going from specialist to try and understand why he was having these seizures. And it took about 6 months for the diagnosis to come through. He ended up having a brain biopsy, and that showed that it was brain tumours. And for me as a mother at that time, it was my worst nightmare coming true. Couldn't believe that my son had this terrible illness that was ultimately going to take his life. When the doctors told us that Kai's brain tumours were terminal and that he would definitely die, we talked about it together, and I asked him, how do you want your death process to be? And he was like, I definitely want to be at home. So in the final 4 weeks of his life, he was in my bed with me, and I took care of him 24/7 alongside the support of my family. At this stage, he couldn't talk or walk. The brain tumours had taken over his body, so he'd lost all his motor skills and his speech ability. And when I had asked myself in the past, how am I going to get the courage to do this? That time gave me the courage. He gave me the courage. I remember I was lying in there next to him, and I had this epiphany that I needed to live out the rest of my days with love and compassion. And he was still alive at this time, and I made this declaration and this promise to him. Malachi was 16 when he crossed over. I went into a deep, deep depression and was grieving. I didn't see how I could find my way out of it. Losing a child, it doesn't seem like it's the natural order, and you question everything. I questioned everything, like, why did he have to lose his life? Why so young? He was such a beautiful, kind-hearted, spirited, happy person. I used to call him the Pied Piper because he always had an attraction of friends and people around him, and he had a really beautiful nature. He would take in the kids at school that were bullied, and he had this fantastic circle of friends. So for me, all the questions around my grieving was why, and like, how am I going to get through this? How's my life ever going to feel happy again? And I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. I guess the thing that affected me the most in my grief was trying to understand and come to terms with the pain that he must have felt, and him having to come to terms with his own life coming to an end. And he did it with so much grace. He was so strong and never complained, and just always a smile on his face. But that was an underlying question that I continued to have in my mind, like, how is he dealing with this? And as a mother, to have to take that in and on and support your child through it, it takes so much courage and strength, and I just didn't know where I was going to pull that from. It's been 4 years since Kai crossed over, and I'm so happy to say that I now live in Bali and I've got an amazing life. But the start of the grief process didn't start like that. It was difficult and challenging and terrifying and dark and depressive. I was in Bali on a holiday, and I audibly heard Kai say to me, and I was sitting at the beach, and I audibly heard him say to me, "Mum, you've got to move to Bali." So I went back to Melbourne and I packed up my life and I moved to Bali, and I've been here 2 years now, and I have the happiest life. I'm so grateful for that. It's bittersweet that it's happened that way, but it is a gift for me. What I'd like to share, and for people that are going through a similar situation, is that it's okay to grieve and to allow yourself to grieve, and to grieve however you need to grieve, but to also know that it doesn't need to go on forever. There'll always be waves, but grief can also be a gift. And I will always honour my grieving. I still grieve, but just not as deeply and darkly as I did before. I grieve now with a joyous smile in my heart, and having love and compassion at the forefront of my life now, I see the world completely different, and I see people different, and I see what an amazing place that we are in, and that life can be joyous again. When I share my story, people ask me, like, how have you got through this? That's just, you know, a terrible thing to have to happen for a mother, and it is a terrible thing. But I always respond that He's also given me one of the greatest gifts in my life, because through that process, I understood that I need to be doing something different with my life and be living somewhere where I'm happy and passionate and following my dreams. So it is actually one of the greatest gifts He could have ever left me with.